Hey, uh, good morning, everyone. This is Ken O'Connell with the Montgomery County Small Business Association, and welcome to this webinar that we are very fortunate and very thankful that Councilman Tom Hucker has put together for us. And we want to also recognize David Kuhn for helping put this together and actually putting it together. We have panelists that include Lorig Sharkodian, I'm sure I mispronounced that, Lorig, sorry, and Daniel Karoma. So with that, I just want to introduce that panel and Councilman Hucker, and thank you again for putting this together for the Small Business Association.
Thanks, Ken. Good morning, everybody. Ken, thanks for your willingness to share all this information with the members of Montgomery County Small Business Association and for everything you're doing. You know, it's hard to be a small business owner, as you and your members all know, and there's no time harder than right now, and there's you know, no more need than we see right now for organizations like yours. So thanks for everything you're doing in this very difficult time.
Thank you.
Again, my name is Tom Hucker. I'm Vice President of the Montgomery County Council. Daniel Karoma is with us, who works in the Business Solutions Group, the County Executive Office, and Delegate Sharkodian represents District 20 in Montgomery County on the Economic Matters Committee in the House of Delegates. So I'm really glad that they could join us as well. And I'm also grateful to my Chief of Staff, Dave Kuhns, who was able to put this together. And we'll share everybody's email, I think, once you know, at the end, so everybody can stay in touch with us. It goes without saying, but we all wish our community wasn't dealing with this crisis. I'm, you know, grateful to have organizations like MCSBA to work with to help educate people about the resources that are available. Most small business owners are busy running their small business and trying to meet the day-to-day needs, and often don't have, you know, a lobbyist or an advocate, somebody to stay in touch with the changes in government programs that might benefit them. So organizations like Ken's are really, really valuable. You all know that it's not just that COVID-19 is not just a public health emergency, it's an economic crisis as well. And for the first time, 6 million Americans recently filed for unemployment. Maybe many of you have had to lay off staff already, but just historically, this is unprecedented. The country's never seen, you know, even 700,000 unemployment applications, and now we're over 6 million, like 10 times the number that we've seen in the past. And all over Montgomery County, businesses have shuttered. Thousands of business owners are wondering whether they'll be able to keep the lights on, and if they've closed, whether they'll ever be able to reopen, since we don't really know where the end of this crisis is and how soon it will it'll be behind us. Since the beginning of this emergency, I've been in touch with small business owners all over the county and many around the state, and a lot of government officials as well. Over 90% of our businesses, as you all know more than anybody, have 50 employees or fewer, making small business the backbone of our economy. That's not the case in a lot of jurisdictions around the country, but it's especially the case here in Montgomery County. So it's really important that organizations like yours step into the breach, and that our government programs, as much as we can, really reflect the needs of small businesses, because we're not going to get through this recession and bounce back until small businesses are really taken care of. So I think we should go to slide 2. The good news I wanted to bring you, as limited as it is that my colleagues and I on the council last Tuesday Tuesday of last week, passed an emergency assistance package to deal with COVID-19. And just on starting with the non-business end of it, components, we allocated $10 million of our tax dollars to help our hospitals, which are under grave, you know, tremendous pressure right now. They're filling up with very serious patients. We need to find another 600 hospital beds and additional capacity. So we came up with $10 million in county funds to help them respond to this crisis. We have $260,000 we allocated to Manna Food Center to help address our families that are experiencing food insecurity through the crisis, and to deliver meals to the students and their families who normally get meals through our public schools, who right now there's over 100,000 of them not getting meals because the schools are closed. So we've had to stand up a system through the school system in partnership with MANA to deliver those meals to families in need. We also, it's kind of a creative solution that also helps the economy a little bit, but we allocated $250,000 for hotel and motel rooms. Our hotels are, you know, devastated by this crisis. They're really empty right now because of the need for social distancing and nobody's traveling. But our hospital workers need a safe place to get some rest in between shifts. So we bought up a bunch of hotel rooms for our hospital workers so they don't have to drive all the way home to their home counties in some cases, and they can just get some rest and go right back to their next shift. The right half of the slide there begins with the $20 million that we allocated for emergency grants for to respond to the public health crisis. These are grants, not loans, that are available to small businesses that demonstrate economic need and economic losses due to the COVID crisis that has particularly affected restaurants and retail and hospitality, as I mentioned. Not all of our industry sectors, but it's severely affected some. So you have to demonstrate the losses, but you are eligible, each business is eligible for grants up to $75,000 per business or nonprofit through this program. And we also stood up mini grants of $2,500 for employees that are teleworking to try to get software and hardware in place so people could continue to work. That's the core of the public health emergency grant program. We also allocated, as it mentions, $5 million through our Health and Human Services Department for direct financial assistance to our residents that need it the most. That also will be allocated largely through our nonprofit partners that we work with throughout the year. We're going to talk more about the details of the grants and how you access them, but that's the core of the $36 million package we passed last week. You know, it's hard to be happy about anything during this crisis, but I am proud, and I hope you agree that this is a worthy use of your tax dollars, that Montgomery County stepped up with a vigorous package like this. We are moving this money faster than I think than the state and the federal government has been able to, and our grants are $75,000, where the grants for the state are much more modest. So we're still working to get this money on the street to all those different entities, but I think it's a good start, and it's a balanced program. And we also don't think it's the end of the story. We know this will not be enough to get us through this crisis, but it's sort of a balanced, thoughtful approach to addressing the beginning of the crisis. We can go to the next slide. Thanks. So in terms of eligibility for the Public Health Emergency Grant Program, PHEGP, it's not catchy, but that's what we got. The three key requirements are: you have to have a principal place of business in Montgomery County, which I know has a tremendous overlap with MCSBA. The business employs 100 or fewer full-time equivalent employees and can have more than that if you include your part-time employees. And then the business has demonstrated a significant financial loss, as I mentioned, caused directly or indirectly by a public health emergency. And we'll talk about how to document that. Next slide. I also meant to mention, in addition to the package we passed through the county, we finalized yesterday a letter we're sending to the state, and I'll let Delegate Charkoudian talk about the state programs that have been made available. But one of the, since we know the county funds are limited and the state and the federal government has much greater resources than we have, the state has a well-funded rainy day fund, and we all know this is a rainy day. So I also led an effort to back up Comptroller Francho, who had asked the governor to release $500 million from the rainy day fund for our Maryland businesses. We put together a letter that I signed, the county executive signed, the council president signed, and nearly all of my colleagues signed, and that is now sent off to the governor as well, urging him to open up the rainy day fund to supplement the county's programs. The application notes here on slide 4 Applicants have to be registered in good standing with the state of Maryland, and Daniel can talk to anybody who needs a little help restoring their credentials with the state. Applicants will be required to sign a grant agreement letter with the county, which talks about how you can register to receive the payments. The application will require you to indicate the intended use of county funds, whether it'll be used for things like rent, for your utilities, for your salaries, or other operating expenses. And they are finalizing the guidelines right now, but I've urged them to keep the application very simple and short, to make it available in multiple languages, and to restrict the documentation to basically what all of you are used to completing to file your tax returns, and not require you to track down an accountant and bill some extra hours to them, and have some extra hours billed to your balance sheet when you don't need that. We want you to be able to just get an application done, document your losses, sign, to prevent any kind of fraud, but make this simple and quick, and get the grants on the street. Anything else on this slide? We're accepting the applications online, but we do have a form where you can print them, fill out a PDF, and use that to complete your online application. And we've been joined by District 18 Delegate Jared Solomon is with us as well. Thank you, Jared, for joining us. Okay, slide 5. So for the next steps, I've been in touch as recently as this morning with the county executive and his staff. They anticipate, we've been pushing them, my colleagues and I have both been pushing them to make the application and the guidelines available right away. And obviously they have to do some due diligence. They've been looking at posting it over the next few days. Now, unfortunately, we're approaching a Passover and Easter, and we don't want to put anybody at a disadvantage because something was posted during a religious holiday. So my best guess is it's going to be posted on Monday. If that changes, we can let you know. But you can sign up to get an immediate notification once the application is posted if you sign up on the web form we have there at tomhucker.com/business. And many of you have already done that, so thank you. We want to make sure everybody finds out at the same time. You find out right away, nobody's left behind, and you didn't miss an email about a form. We're going to follow up our emails with phone calls and other outreach to make sure everybody knows the application's been posted. So get your application completed. After that, you'll submit the application, sign and return the offer letter, register your business, and complete the ACH form once you've registered as a vendor, which allows you to receive payments from the county. I think that's the end of my slides. And I don't know, Ken, you're the boss, but if you want to stop there for questions, or if we should go on and just jump right into Daniel's presentation. He's got a couple slides in Lorig, and I'm sure Jared could talk about the state programs as well.
I think, Tom, it might be best to just continue with the presentation so that we get through those and then open up for questions.
Excellent. Okay. Slide 6, please.
Actually, Dave, can you go back 2 slides? There you go. All right. Well, so Councilmember Hucker covered majority of it. I just want to talk about some of the specifics in terms of financials that you need to provide. But let me first of all, so the business entity types that are eligible are, if you are a sole proprietor, you are eligible to apply. I know there are other programs at the state that sole proprietors are not able to apply for. If you're an LLC, a corporation, a partnership, all those business entity types are eligible to apply. For businesses, we're looking at 2-year financials. So if you haven't filed 2019 taxes yet, we're looking for your 2017 and 2018 taxes. For nonprofits, we're looking for your 990s, again, 2 years of that as well. Also, if you have interim financials, that will be helpful because we'll be able to determine the revenue loss from the beginning of the year, all the wait to the timeline where the governor declared the state of emergency. So that's the period we're looking at in terms of when the state of emergency was announced by the governor, and the revenue loss your business or your nonprofit have sustained thereafter. If you're a sole proprietor, we need your Schedule C of your taxes. If you have 2 years of that, and then interim, either monthly or quarterly financials also will help us make that determination. For new businesses or new nonprofits that haven't been, in business for 2 years, haven't been operating for 2 years, if you filed last year taxes, 2018 taxes, you can provide that with either monthly or quarterly interim financials as well. So once I totally agree with Council Vice President Hawker, and the county executive is focusing to ensure that the application is very simple. And so in the application, it's already been constructed. It's not live yet, as Council Vice President Hawker just alluded to. But the goal is for you to prepare right now and get those documents, those financials, so that when the application goes live, you will be able to submit a clean application right away. So let me emphasize this: you would not be able to submit your application if you do not attach the financials. And the reason for that, because we want to make sure that the entire process is fast, right? So if you submit an application without let's say, for example, we allow you to submit an application without the financials, it will take much longer for us to get those financials from you and then do the analysis that needs to be done in the back end, and then send you the offer letter. So that's why on the online form, you will not be able to click submit if the financials are not attached. So I'm hoping that right after this, or even as we are discussing right now what is needed, I'm hoping that you can go and get those 2 years of taxes and interim, quarterly or monthly financials that you can that would allow you to be prepared for the application. And then, so once you get the letter from our finance group, you're going to be required to sign that letter. And also in that email, you'll be sent to our central vendor registration system, which that's where you need to register in order for the county to be able to do ACH, direct deposit, into your business account or your nonprofit account. That being said, that's basically it for me, and I will turn it back to Council Vice President Hawker.
I think next is Delegate Charkoudian to talk about the state programs. Thanks so much, Daniel. That's really thorough.
Sure. Thank you. Hello. So I want to start by thanking Tom and Dave for organizing, for inviting me. Thank you, Ken, for all of your great work all the time, and especially right now. And thank you, Daniel, for your supports. And Jared, glad you're here as well. I also want to thank everybody who's on this call, and it's a really difficult time for everybody. And I think that all of our residents and our small businesses have made extraordinary sacrifices for the health of the community. And so I feel like it's just really important to continue to thank and be grateful for the sacrifices folks are willing to make to keep everybody healthy, and really to minimize the public health and the sort of full impact that this crisis could have. So recognizing that doing that takes a great deal of sacrifice, especially from small businesses that are the lifeblood of our community. I want to sort of offer my support along with everybody at the county level in a couple of ways. First, I'm going to talk about some of the commerce programs. I'm going to talk about a few other state level decisions and pieces of information folks may want to be aware of. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the SBA program, the Paycheck Protection program, and some of the conversations I'm having with bankers and credit unions. So starting with the state level, I'm sorry to say that since these slides were created and we decided what we were going to discuss today, both the emergency loan fund, which was $10,000 to small businesses and nonprofits, as well as the emergency grant fund, have been closed. at least for now. They got a great deal of applications. Those applications are being reviewed right now, and hopefully very soon folks will know if they got that funding. Hopefully people on this call have had a chance to apply for those. I've got some calls in to find out what the exact timing is of when people will find out and when the money will become available. And I don't have an answer yet from Commerce, but I do know that within the state agencies, folks from other grant making agencies have been shifted over to Commerce to use their skills to be able to, as quickly as possible, review all the applications that have come in. There's been a lot of sort of staff sharing amongst the various state agencies from places where people have certain expertise like grant review into other agencies where there's a more urgent need. The relief manufacturing grant fund is still available. I know there's a range of businesses on here, so I'll mention this to the extent that there are some who might do some manufacturing. This allows for up to $100,000 grants for anybody who's doing manufacturing to either shift to manufacturing some of the urgent protective gear needs, face shields and gowns and so on, as well as to anyone who's already manufacturing those items to ramp up and increase the manufacturing of those items. So those are that fund still remains, and so folks are encouraged to apply for that one. And as with any state level issue, we encourage you to reach out to us as your state representatives if you're having any difficulty with getting through to the state agency. If you have questions that you're not getting answers to, sometimes we can get answers when phone lines might be ringing and on hold for a while. So two other things though that I just want to mention about the state level issues, and then we can take questions later. I have talked to a lot of small businesses in my district about this question about what the responsibility is to determine if you are a essential business, and then what your responsibility is once you make that determination. So I'll just mention a couple things. There is some guidance, although it does leave some questions for some businesses. I think businesses generally at this point have figured out if they are essential or not, although if people are having trouble, I would encourage you to reach out to anyone on this panel to figure that out. But I do want to stress the second thing is that even once it's clear that you are essential, it is the business owner's responsibility to then put into place the protective processes to protect employees and potential customers. And I think that generally the way the businesses can protect themselves the most from possible enforcement around those issues is to make very clear what their plan is and then post it publicly. So if you're an outward facing business, some sort of retail or food establishment or other outward facing business, post very publicly, what the plan is around, 6 feet of distance between people or protective gear or whatever. So that we can provide additional support to folks who have those kinds of questions from the state. I am actually, it looks like there's potentially an answer here, sorry, from Commerce. So let me just see if that's useful. Their goal is to get people the funds 21 days from when they submitted their application, but with the overwhelming volume, they can't say if they'll meet that timeline. So the intention of Commerce is to get folks the funds if you've applied for either of these state grants within 21 days from when you submitted your application. The one other thing I just want to mention in case folks have questions about it is related to unemployment insurance. The state has determined that if you have had to lay off workers as a result of the virus, the unemployment insurance tax rate for the remainder of 2020 is going to remain the same as what it was before the public health crisis began. So the idea is not to penalize businesses who with unemployment insurance tax increases if you've had to lay people off because you've had to shut down your business. There hasn't been a decision yet made about what happens in 2021 and how those funds will ultimately end up being recovered. And I think the hope is that we'll be able to have some federal funds to replenish the fund. And I think, there's a lot of really open questions there, but for the remainder of 2020, the unemployment insurance tax rates should stay the same as they were before the public health crisis. Tom, I can share a little bit of information also about the federal programs if you want to move on to the next one, or if you wanted to talk about that first, or if
No,
Jared.
be my guest, please. That'd be great.
Hmm?
Be my guest, please. That would be great.
Okay, so maybe the next slide. So I think folks have probably at this point heard about the SBA Paycheck Protection Program. In addition to the Paycheck Protection Program, there's also the general emergency disaster SBA loans. And so I'll just highlight a couple things that are differences between them. So with the Paycheck Protection Program, folks are probably aware these are forgivable loans. The loans are available through local banks. It's actually the bank that does the loan. And then I'm going to come back to that in a second. That's a really important piece. The bank does the loan, and the loans can be used for payroll, for mortgage interest, for rent, and for utilities. At least 75% has to be used for payroll, and the total amount of the loan can be 2.5 times your monthly payroll amount. So figure out what your payroll is for 1 month, multiply by 2.5. That's the total amount of the loan. Everything that we're seeing right now, although this is a moving target, but everything that we're seeing right now suggests that these funds are that if you keep all of your employees on staff for and on payroll for 8 weeks, then the entire loan can be forgiven, even the parts of the loan that are used for utilities or rent or some other cost. So that's kind of the big picture information that we're getting. A lot of the details are still sort of coming out. I have been in touch with the Maryland Bankers Association, the Maryland Credit Unions Association. I'm hearing from some small businesses that they're reaching out to their bankers, and there's a couple of challenges within it. One is the banks are still scrambling to set up their own internal processes to be able to handle the applications. And the second is that there are some of the feedback we've gotten from some small businesses is that the banks are sort of picking and choosing amongst even their own folks who have accounts within that bank, that they're picking and choosing who they're going to engage with. And that was not the intention. The intention is really to make sure that all the, especially small businesses that might be struggling more in this crisis, have more access through this. And so I mentioned that to say that I would encourage folks to, if you're having trouble with your bank, I would encourage you to reach out to your federal and state and county elected officials and make sure that we're aware of that so we can continue in this conversation. My conversation with the Credit Union Association last week, they have indicated that they are willing to consider making loans to people who aren't members right now, although a business would have to qualify, and credit unions have very specific sort of guidelines of who can and can't be a member. Today's conversation I'm having with the Maryland Bankers Association, unfortunately it's this afternoon, so I don't have information to share from them, but what I would like to do is offer, if folks have questions that I can take to them or feedback that I can take to them, I'm happy to do that, and then find ways to get the information back to this group. I see a question pop in about LLC, and yes, the sole proprietors and LLCs and businesses that are sort of self-employed individuals are eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program. The one thing that I do want to highlight is the SBA also has other emergency loans, and it's my understanding that if you apply for one, you're not eligible to apply for the other. So, so you do want to think about and do those are loans. You want to do your sort of cost benefit analysis before you pick which one you want to apply for. I think the one other thing that I wanted to mention about the Paycheck Protection Program, I've talked, as I said, to a couple businesses that have started the process. Some of the banks aren't necessarily fully up and running and ready to process the applications. It's my understanding that similar to the state programs, for example, that there's an element of first come, first serve. So if you think that this is what you want to do. You are, as with any other loan, you're not committed to anything until you sign the loan document. So if you think that this program is helpful for you, you may want to start right now reaching out to your bank, filling out the application. The first part of it is a downloadable PDF and a number of documents that you need to gather. The bank after that may require additional information from you. But my recommendation would be, if you think that this is what you want to do, is that you get yourself in the queue, fill out that information, reach out to the bank, get it in the queue, so that even if the bank is going to take time to be ready to process the rest of the information, excuse me, I don't have a fever. Even if the bank is going to take some time to be ready to process the rest of that application, you're at least in the queue, and then you can decide later if you choose not to sign the ultimate loan applications. So that's kind of a broad overview from the conversations I've had with folks who are considering that, and then really an invitation to keep me posted so we can hold banks accountable, and to let me know if there's questions that folks have.
Lorg, I just wanted to jump in with a couple of points, and thank you to everybody on the call. Thanks to Ken and Tom and Daniel for organizing. So Lorg's absolutely right about, unfortunately, the state programs are at this point, except for the manufacturing program, on hold. There's also the Department of Labor has a layoff aversion fund that was funding grants for businesses to be able to essentially shift to teleworking or to a more distance type of employment. That also is on hold. We have, I think many of us have been in touch with the Department of Commerce to essentially ask them, when they're planning on reopening the programs, what we as legislators need to do, if we need to make sure there's more authorization for the rainy day fund. As the councilman mentioned, we've been incredibly fiscally responsible at the state level, and we have a very sizable rainy day fund that has a substantial amount of money in it. And I think this is certainly a storm, and it is raining substantially. So we want to be able to make sure that that money is available. And on the plus side, I think the fact that those programs are so oversubscribed shows that there is a need, and hopefully we will be meeting those needs. The one piece that I wanted to just add on, and the council member had mentioned it briefly, but the comptroller's office has waived and delayed quite a number of the tax requirements for businesses this year in the state of Maryland, and also businesses who have already paid part of their taxes for the year can actually request a refund from the comptroller's office. So if cash flow is something that is extremely tight right now, you can actually go back to the comptroller's office and again get a refund. I know some of those taxes can be fairly substantial, so we want to make sure that the folks on the call know that that's an option, as well as again delaying for at least 90 days a lot of the payments that are required for your annual taxes. The other point I wanted to just highlight, and I think Lorg mentioned this as well, the unemployment piece is something that I think is extremely substantial. I've talked to a number of businesses that, just based on the economics of things, have actually furloughed their employees so that they're, able to continue to cover their healthcare costs, especially if, if they're not able to remain open during this time. And the unemployment benefits with the supplement from the federal government are actually fairly robust, and they'll be backdated to the date when employees were furloughed or a business was closed. So Marylanders can qualify for up to $430 a week from the state, and then there's an additional $600 a week added on from the federal government that again is tax-free as part of the CARES Act. So your employees can get a fairly robust unemployment benefit in addition to, again, any healthcare benefits that are covered by the employer. So I know for some of the folks that I've talked to, it was actually a little bit more economically beneficial for them to furlough employees, continue to pay the benefits, and allow their employees to get the unemployment benefits while they weather the storm. So just wanted to put that out there as an option for folks as well, and would just echo the sentiments of everybody else who's spoken. We're happy to help assist in any way possible. So please use this as a resource. While we can't necessarily snap our fingers and make it happen, as Lorg mentioned, a well-placed phone call and some assistance can help to expedite the process. So happy to be of assistance in any way possible.
Great. So do we want to jump into some questions? Great. So the first question from Carol was for on the county program. She asked, can you elaborate on the interim financials you'll be wanting for the public health emergency grant program? What's the date range? Do you need a balance sheet and income statement?
Yeah, so the what we're looking at, the 2 years of tax returns will give us year-over-year revenues, and then if you file quarterly, then we'll be able to see in terms of that quarter. So we're looking anything before the governor's executive order, which I believe was March 25th, I believe. But don't hold me to that. But anything before the governor's executive order would be the period we look at going forward in terms of the decline in revenues. So that's basically what we use the financials for. And let me also state that when all financials and any documentation that is submitted is going to be submitted to a secure site, and they will be held securely as well. So I just want to make sure I add that to that.
The next question is from Gary Hess. Can the grant be used for insurance costs, federal or state taxes, rent that is not covered by the federal grant? What other types of expenses can it be used for?
So inventory would be would be one of those utilities. Anything that would keep, either if the business is currently partially open, rent, absolutely, it is covered. Wages for, yeah, and taxes as well, yes.
Another question, because of our backload of work and billing our firm, our firm will not feel the brunt of this emergency for several more months. How would our application be viewed because our financials will not show a major downturn right now?
So we've had a couple of those questions, and what we're looking at now, as Council Vice President Hucker stated, the fund is 20 million. So there are going to be some businesses if you cannot show that. And when we talk about significant loss, the best practice right now we're seeing in the metropolitan area and throughout the country is a 25% decline in revenue. Now the regs are being developed. They're almost done actually. So we haven't determined yet if it's going to be that standard across the board, 25% decline in revenue. So, but that's something that if additional appropriation is made, then those who have applied that did not get the first tranche will then be considered for whatever funds are behind. Now, there's no cutoff date. We're not looking to shut down the application at all, because we want to make sure that people can apply, and then on the back end, the work will be done to determine eligibility.
Can I just jump in there for a second? I think the other thing that Councilmember Hucker mentioned earlier, and I would just reiterate, is all of us are really clear that the stuff that we're doing in the next month, 2 months, even 3 months is just really emergency steps to kind of keep people with income, keep businesses open. And there's no question in any of our minds that there has to be a much more significant relief package that really kind of gets the economy moving again. And so there is a real sense, a full understanding. I mean, I'm scanning some of the comments that are about highlighting what a drop in the bucket this is. And I think that we recognize that. And it's still really crucial that we help as many people get access to these grants and loans as possible. But with full recognition that all of us have to be figuring out what the next step, big picture, getting the economy running again, keeping businesses going and keeping residents with income, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, 5 months from now. And so even while we're looking at this, which is a very short-term thing and very important and needs to be supported, there's none of us imagine that this is the only thing that we're going to be doing. Right.
Just to elaborate on that, I think Laura's totally right. This is sort of an iterative process, and I hope you all understand, there's sort of a tension. we know the county funds, there are limits to the state funds, and there's limits, even greater limits to the county funds, especially in a time when we were anticipating 25% less revenue coming into the county because of the downturn. But at the same time, if we don't keep the economy going as much as we can and help it to restart when it's appropriate for public health reasons, then there won't be any revenue, and we exacerbate the problem. So this is kind of an iterative process. We wanted to get this package out as quickly as possible. We didn't want to wait too long to see what the state and the feds were going to come forward with. But as Lorick said, we don't view this as the final thing at all, just the first. I was able to pass an amendment to reserve a portion of these funds for retail and restaurants, because all the economists have pointed out, and no surprise to you all, that due to the need for social distancing that's unique to this recession, restaurants and retail have been hit the hardest, and that'll continue to be the case. But they're certainly not the only ones that are hit hard. I know the county executive and the county the chief administrative officer, I've been in touch with both of them, really want to get these grants as quickly as possible, even small grants, to some of the businesses that need it the most quickly, to help them keep the lights on. And I know Councilwoman Navarro and I and Councilwoman member Albornoz are preparing a second package aimed at, I think, additional funds for retail and restaurant, because we know this will be oversubscribed very quickly. So the last thing I just wanted to add is we don't think by any means that we have all the good ideas. This package that we put together came about because I and others have heard so much feedback from our small businesses about what they needed. And we're eager to hear your feedback, and you too can, from you and all your members, about what's needed in the future and what gaps still exist. And we'd love to get that feedback before we put together the second package or the third package that'll pass through the council. And I imagine the case is the same with our state legislators.
Yeah, I would echo Tom's sentiments. I think the other important thing to note, while we don't have a federal representative on the call, we're really lucky. Senator Cardin is actually the ranking member on the Senate Small Business Committee in the U.S. Congress, and so many of us have been in touch with our federal representatives to let them know what we're hearing. But please let us know. Please share with our federal folks as the federal government is designing their next package. There's already been discussion this week of, I think, an additional $250 billion put into the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as move by, I think, the Federal Reserve to federally back and ensure a lot of these small business loans and small business grant programs. So I think the federal government, certainly Congress, is hearing, at least our state representatives are hearing, a lot of the concerns that we have. But as Tom mentioned, we are somewhat limited. I mean, we're expecting a 25 to 30% potential write down in state revenue as well. And unlike the federal government, we're not allowed to deficit spend. We have to have a balanced budget at the end of every year. So while we have a robust rainy day fund, we are somewhat limited at the state level. And I think a lot of the more robust supports we're hoping will be coming from the federal government.
Great. So I'll take two more questions on general questions, and then we have some questions about PPP we can go back to, and then we will have to wrap up. Reverend Fenner said that her hourly teachers who cannot work in their preschool have been denied unemployment benefits due to the lack of unemployment tax as a nonprofit or a church. So that might be a situation that other nonprofits or churches are in as well. Is there anything that can be done for those employees, or is there someone, is there contact information so anyone in this situation could follow up with you?
Yeah, let me take that. I've spent every day in deep conversation with the Department of Labor. That doesn't sound quite right, because it's a payroll tax, and so every nonprofits or for-profit businesses will pay their payroll taxes. So it's a section of the unemployment is one of the sections of the payroll taxes that come out of every paycheck. So the nonprofit designation shouldn't affect that. It's other taxes that a nonprofit organization doesn't pay. And so I guess I would need to see, and my contact information is up there, if someone can send me an email with the specifics of what the rejection is that's coming from the Department of Labor. But there's no reason that anyone who works for nonprofits or churches or anybody else who has had so anyone who has had payroll taxes taken out of their paychecks, which is a sort of standard employee, should be eligible right now for unemployment insurance. Anyone who is self-employed, who has his 1099s or another structure that hasn't had payroll taxes taken out, is not currently eligible, normally eligible for unemployment insurance, but the CARES Act expands unemployment insurance to make those people eligible as well. Right now, the state portal is not yet set up to be able to accept the newly eligible pool of folks, but it will be set up very, very soon, we're told. And so folks who are self-employed and now unemployed will be eligible for benefits through the CARES Act, through the same Department of Labor website. It's mdunemployment.com. You can get to the website. And I would remind folks, anyone, whether you're able to get your application in now or not, or you're on hold for 24 hours with them, which I know is very frustrating. The unemployment benefits themselves go back to when the unemployment began, regardless of when you were able to file or when your application is approved. So I know that doesn't help folks with paying the bills today, but you don't lose total money. Is not lost if it takes you time or if it takes the state time to get that system up and running. So for the specific feedback, if there's some sort of disconnect of what those employees are hearing, please do shoot me an email. My email is in that box right there, lorg.charkoudian, and we'll get some answers from Department of Labor.
I was going to say, I'll jump in on that one as well. So unfortunately, I know because we were handling a similar situation with a couple of the synagogues in our district who have childcare centers. So many religious organizations do not pay unemployment taxes. So there was a complicated factor in that. The last time I spoke to the Department of Labor, they were still trying to figure out exactly how the CARES Act was expanding that access and whether or not certain organizations might have to pay, at least some who hadn't in the past. I know some religious organizations have a relationship where they pay sort of quarterly, but there is actually a religious exemption from having to pay unemployment taxes. So I'm glad Lorg's going to look into that, and I'm happy to follow up as well. I did just want to mention that I thought I saw a question in another box. Religious organizations are eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program, particularly, again, if you're a religious entity that has, a childcare center or another nonprofit. I know sometimes those organizations are chartered under the religious entity's 501c3 status, which can complicate things, but the Jewish Federation in particular has done just yeoman's work on this. So if there are any specific questions, they've actually put together a guide, while specific obviously to a lot of Jewish organizations, is applicable to pretty much any religious organization, and I'm happy to share that as well. And I'll type my email in if folks want to follow up with me individually.
Great. And then a quick question for probably for Daniel. If the corporation or business applying for the county program is owned jointly, do all owners need to sign the application?
Yes.
Okay. And then on the remote access grant, Gary asks, what are the details of what the money can be used for? And is there a limit on how much can be spent per employee? Well, I guess we probably covered that.
Yeah, I know that
question
was part of the legislation. So the cap is 2,500, and it's up to the business owner in terms of what teleworking equipment that they would like to buy.
So jumping over to the federal program, Wahid asks, says his business bank and personal bank are not taking any more applications for the federal programs. Do any of you have any advice for him or others in similar situations?
To my knowledge, I know there are some CDFIs that are also taking application. Those are community development financial institutions. So these are nonprofits that get money from the Treasury Department. We have one in Montgomery County, which is LEDC, the Latino LEDC.
Economic Development
There
Corporation.
you go. Thank you, Delegate Chakria. Yeah, so they're the one. I would recommend that someone reach out to them if they have the capacity, because I know, yeah, it's a tough situation right now. I've been getting calls on that as well.
Did you put their website or contact information in the chat box so everyone can see?
You got that, Daniel? If you know, whoever put that question in, if you're willing to shoot me an email and let me know what the bank is and specifically what it is that they're saying. Are they saying generally? I know some banks are saying we have a waiting list right now. We're trying to get through them all, so get in line. But if you could share with me the bank and specifically what the communication is, and as we're talking both to the Bankers Association and to the to our federal folks, to see what we can do to get the banks to make sure that the money is getting to the smaller businesses, which it was designed to be getting to. The
Right.
folks I think are on this call.
Likewise, I'm happy to help as well. I've been in touch with a number of lenders locally, local banks that are administering this. So happy to help if it's one of theirs.
So I know there were other questions please, that we're not going to be able to get to. If you can use the contact information on the slide for follow-up. I did want to say, and then I'll turn it over to our speakers for closing remarks. This webinar will be posted on the MCSBA website. It'll also be posted on Tom's Facebook and website, and we'll also send it around to the other speakers so they can post it, so it can be viewed after if you have any questions or want to revisit something. We'll also, and then you'll be able to also see the slides of state and federal resources. So let me turn it back over to Tom if there's any closing remarks you want to give.
Well, thanks again to Ken for sponsoring this and getting the word out, and thanks so much to Daniel for being available. This is probably your 27th webinar in the last couple of days, and to Lorg and Jared for chiming in and adding so much as well. This is really a moving target. We're all trying to track in real time. None of us have all the answers, but hopefully with so many experts available today and beyond today, you can get your questions answered. Again, I want to repeat, we don't feel like we have all the answers or even all the questions. So, feel free to send in additional questions to us, and we'll try to track down the answers. I held a town hall last Monday where we had over 500 individual questions come in that we've responded to now. And we really would love to get your suggestions. Every time I talk to business owners, I hear about individual small groups of businesses that may or may not fit into certain categories that I wasn't aware of. And it's really helpful to all of us as policymakers to hear from you, because then we can make policy that's responsive to your needs. Last thing I want to mention, I'm hosting another webinar tomorrow with Maryland Commerce Secretary Kelly Schulz at 3 p.m. And you can sign up for that if you go to tomhucker.com/commerce. And it's at the bottom of this slide 10 that you're looking at. And but you certainly don't need to wait for that to apply for state assistance, but she'll have more information on, I think, the not just this program, but other state programs aimed at businesses and small businesses that you may not be aware of that even predate the COVID crisis. And then my office hosts a general town hall every Monday at 7, where I know you all have identities beyond your role as business owners. You care about public safety, you care about education, you care about public health. We've had experts, directors of county agencies and police commanders and others on the line where you can get your questions answered as well. And we go for, over an hour every Monday night if you want to join in on that as well. And those are streamed live from my Facebook page and my county page. That's what I got. Let me turn it over to our other panelists and thank everybody again for coming.
I just want to quickly highlight that, again, if you get all the documentation we need, you will hear from us really, really fast. Also, the questions have been very useful. So I'm going to discuss with Dave if I can get some of those questions, because we're creating an FAQ so that when you go online to apply, if there are questions that you have about the application. There are some other questions are there, but we'll add some of these questions there as well. I see a question about self-employed. If you have, let's say, a special circumstance that you want to, email me about, my email is on the contact. You can send it to me. I know realtors were made mention of, but for clarity, once you are a registered entity, could be for-profit or non-profit, and your principal place of business is in the county, you're eligible for the county grant.
So I'll just close by sort of where I started, which is thanking folks again for their sacrifice for the greater public health good, and really asking that we sort of all keep working in partnership to make sure that we have a strong, robust economy that's really the small businesses as the foundation of that. And it's crucial, and it's our job to make sure that we're working with you to make sure that on the other end of this, we have that sort of an economy in place. So with that in mind, I think we've all said, reach out to us. I think even when we don't have really good answers in the immediate first couple days, the conversations that we've been having with folks have ended up influencing, as Councilmember Hucker said, have ended up influencing policies that we've made and will influence policies that get made over the next several months. And so hopefully we can help you right away, but even if we're not able to help right away, the conversations that we have with you really will shape our thinking and our policies going forward. So we really appreciate folks' willingness to engage and share concerns and challenges and feedback with us.
I would just add very briefly, I would echo the sentiments that everybody else has shared, but I know I saw a comment that somebody had posted about what sort of things would look like when we get back to normal, or what kind of additional training and support would be available, after the crisis passes. And I think to just highlight what Delegate Charkoudian was saying, we will be getting, there is a substantial amount of federal support coming into the state in a variety of different areas. So, if there are things, that you feel like we really need to be focusing on, please let us know, as we figure out how to spend that money and where to put those resources. And I think there'll be a particular focus on, higher education to make sure that our community colleges and our institutions of learning are there for retraining and programs that people may need after this passes.
And I guess I'll just close by saying that the Montgomery County Small Business Association will be reaching out to our membership, and we'll be seeking ideas and comments and needs, and we will forward that information to you and keep you in that loop. And perhaps in a few weeks we can revisit another webinar for an update. But I just want to again thank everyone on the panel, and Tom and Lorig, Daniel, Dave, Jared, everyone for participating, and all the members that joined this webinar. We hope it was helpful, and we will be in touch, Tom.
Great. Thanks so much to all of you. Thanks so much, Ken. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.